Hi, I'm Cesar Santos. I thought it would be nice to share some of my thoughts about how we can go with those simple elements that run art and see if we can go deep into them in a simple way to incorporate them into our everyday life. Art has some principles that are universal, and the more I study art and I study art from the past or art in my own life, it has certain principles that I can include in my living, in my everyday life, so that it can enrich it, so that it can improve it. And I'll get to the changes. I haven't been posting videos in a while, and now I think it's a good time to start sharing it and showing some of the results that I have gotten from this type of thinking. Every culture changes in time and it transforms in new ways of thinking. What has been long-lasting values that we can all incorporate in an organic way, in a natural way? The principles that run through art are principles that have that quality of long lasting. They have a quality of universality to it, because every art from any period we can appreciate and still almost feel the love and the attention that was put into it whenever the artist was doing it. So in a way, every artwork is still new if we go to it and if we revise it in the present. And not only in visual arts, these principles exist, they also exist in music, because music has a lot of involvement with timing and empty spaces, with sounds that become notes, and they create a constant rhythm in the present. That's why we can go back to listening to the same music. Music is not about the ending, it's about the process of listening to it. Also, as a life progresses, it's almost like a song. Every moment we are in a different environment with different things coming at us. Let's start with the idea of an empty space to draw. Where do we draw? We need a clean, empty area to work on, whether it's on a wall or paper or canvas, anything. That means that there has to be space available. The cup has to be empty in order to be useful, to fill it in with whatever we incorporate as individuals in this kind of continuous rhythm of life. We realized that Miami was getting too busy for us. It was getting too muddy, too clustered, and we wanted it to clean it up a little bit. And we decided to take a van, prepare it so that it would be comfortable to live in, and take off 6 months and go and visit 20 states. We ended up going through 200 cities, and that gave us a feeling of living in real time. I couldn't rely on things I knew from before. Everything was a discovery. So we lived more in tune with the sense of music going through time, through space. After doing that, we realized that we didn't miss anything of the material stuff that we had accumulated in Miami. The only thing we missed was my collection, my art collection. It's also material, but it's more of an experience that you have with you. And every time you see a painting, it's new. That's why we are not done looking at Velázquez or any master. The van almost, and I don't know if this is symbolic, the van was white. It almost looked like the eraser that we needed to erase this busyness of our lives and start a little bit more fresh again. Start to rediscover some simple values that can enrich our lives fully from within, in relationship to each other and to the rest of the people. So we decided to sell everything. We got rid of the van, the cars, the house, gave away even my tools, my painting materials, and moved to Italy, to Florence, where I met my wife 15 years ago, and decided to kind of start again and kind of continue our art experience, our life experience here with new tools and new space. But let's go back to the idea of the empty space. This page, if you're starting to draw, you can imagine the dot of the pen or the dot of the pencil, the initial beginning, needs this empty space that our mind reproduce as this area, this new universe where you can create the world. And the moment that dot keeps moving, it becomes a line. It could be straight, it could have curves, and that is what a drawing is supposed to describe. It's supposed to describe your experience as you walk, as you navigate through this empty space, this page, or life. So when this dot that initial thought, that initial action is based on observation, interpretation of what we are looking at, what we are experiencing, either from our dreams, from our creativity, or from something we see in nature. Because even though you're looking at it in nature, it doesn't mean you're copying it. Nothing can be repeated twice in nature if it's gonna be natural, because two leaves are not the same. This gives us freedom to create something knowing that if we are honest with our actions, it will be original. This line becomes a continuous form, and when they intersect in the space, they become a shape. So a shape is pretty much the intersection of two of these lines meeting together, almost like babies. You start to create memories once you start putting together and connecting two or more experiences. At first, when you have the first impression, you don't know where to put it in your mind, so it's just an empty space, and that's beautiful. But since we don't work like that, as our organism needs reference to move on, these shapes can create illusions in our brains, in our minds, that we can dream into them. And when you keep working with these lines and these shapes, and then you start to really feel the objects in three-dimensional form, you start to create also the illusion that you're transforming this flat space, this two-dimensional shape, into three dimensions. Now we have something that goes inside deep and outside and goes around, and we can dream into it with the drawing like that, because you're following forms. Just with a line, you can create that sense of three-dimensional, of a space, of a universe being born. After we have that, we have a structure. We don't have light yet. It's kind of like a blind universe that we are creating. The moment we introduce light, in nature, light and color go together. You cannot have light without color, or colors without light. But our tools can represent the idea of monochromatic effects. So you can have the pen having only one color, or maybe with oil paints, black and white or brown or whatever. You can study the effect of light and shadow without the involvement of color, just for the sake of studying it. This type of attitude will give the three-dimensional object a presence, a weight, an existence, an environment. Whether you have a space that is dark, so you completely cover this whiteness of the page into darkness, then you introduce a sense of something catching light and telling a story. Our story begins in the morning when we get up and we meet the light. We come out from this unconscious experience that we had all night in the darkness. So you can play like that with your art surface. And then after you have created that, you can work with the idea of color. Now, color is what bounces off objects. And depending on what the object absorbs, you don't see. What the object reflects, you see. All these different qualities, like an apple, that you, by its color, you know its significance. All these colors on surfaces is giving us more dimension, more of an experience, tonalities to what we want to say. So as artists, we have life to learn from. There has been many systems of creating art and many ways to teach it, so that we have a standard. Feel open to be sensitive again and rediscover these basic elements, because we have such an abundance of materials. We go to art stores and we have plenty of colors, plenty of pencils, plenty of clean surfaces that we haven't had the chance to appreciate as we should. A tool can be something really important once you need it. If you don't need it, it's just a tool. But the moment you need it, this tool becomes the most important thing in the moment. Appreciate the simplest elements that you're playing with as tools. Once you appreciate and love your tools, they will be more in tune with your intentions, and you will see more of your truth, and they will tell you who you are all about. Don't reject what you're doing, because it's almost like rejecting your own self, and go with it. Try to do the best with that space. The act of creation starts with appreciating that empty space as much as the traveling and the creating within it.